Russian President Vladimir Putin, during a visit to Valam Island with Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko, announced the delivery of the first batch of mass-produced Oreshnik ballistic missile systems to Russian forces. He also revealed that military experts are preparing deployment sites in Belarus, with full installation expected by year-end. Let's listen into what Russian president has said.
У нас произведен первый серийный комплекс Орешника, первая серийная ракета. Да. И она поступила в войска. Теперь серия заработала. Первое. Второе, наши специалисты, и белорусские военные специалисты, и российские, выбрали место для будущих позиций. И сейчас идет работа по подготовке этих позиций. Так что, скорее всего, мы до конца года, наши войска наступают по всей линии боевого соприкосновения. По всей. И в приграничной зоне, и в Донецкой республике, в Луганской, и Запорожье, и в Херсоне. Везде, на всех участках, где-то больше, где-то меньше.
Putin confirmed that Russian troops are advancing along the front line in Ukraine. Despite the West's efforts to halt their progress, additionally, he claimed Russian forces had secured the town of Chasiv Yar in Donetsk region. Although Ukraine denies this, Putin reiterated his call for lasting and durable peace in Ukraine, insisting the conditions for peace remain unchanged. Let's listen into what Russian president has said.
Повторю еще раз, нам нужен длительный и прочный мир на хороших базовых основаниях, которые удовлетворяли бы и Россию, и Украину, обеспечили бы безопасность обеих стран. И, наверное...
Now we're joined by Irina Zuckerman. She is a senior journalist. She joins us live from New York. Thank you, Irina, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, can you tell us the background or history between Belarus and Russia? Why this timing? Why is Belarus hosting Russian military deployments now? And what does this add to this layer of to the conflict?
Since the Soviet Union has been a de facto colony of Moscow, just as with the other Soviet republics, it was essentially annexed and was treated as a lesser partner throughout the Soviet Union years. And after the breakdown of the Soviet Union, while it became a technically independent country, it remained a dictatorship, unlike many other post-Soviet states, not only within the Soviet Union proper, but also in the Eastern Europe. In general, it never underwent any sort of reforms. It retained the dictatorship by Lukashenko, who is an ally of Putin. At times, he made statements trying to make himself appear somewhat more independent from Russia, but over Putin's tenure, specifically after the 90s, that attempts at independence have erased, and Lukashenko has become, at this point, he's nothing more than a puppet of Moscow.
And Irina, I would like to also ask, what does this deepening military cooperation between Russia and Belarus mean now for NATO and the broader geopolitical landscape in Eastern Europe?
Well, there's nothing new about Belarus hosting Russian forces. The post-Soviet dependency, shared authoritarian interests, economic coercion, and a very long-standing Russian security doctrine that views Belarus as a critical buffer zone against NATO are part of the story. Belarus is not simply willingly hosting Russian troops and equipment, but even nuclear weapons. The latest developments are a reflection of that close cooperation. Belarus is part of various Russian-led integration projects, including the Union State, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union. They are symbolizing Belarus' commitment to Moscow's sphere of influence And Russia has incrementally gained influence over Belarusian military infrastructure, border policies, and even information systems. And after the 2020 Belarusian presidential elections, which many people regarded as fraudulent and which resulted in massive protests, Lukashenko faced the most serious challenge to his rule. The West responded with sanctions, diplomatic isolation, but Russia offered security guarantees, propaganda support, and economic bailouts, which decisively shifted Belarus away from any pretense of neutrality or multi-vector foreign policy and placed it squarely under Moscow's auspices. Lukashenko's political survival is now entirely dependent on Moscow, giving Putin enormous leverage to make increasingly broad military demands, which resulted in Russia deepening its military presence in Belarus over time. Joint exercises such as Zapad became more frequent. Infrastructure was built or repurposed to accommodate Russian forces permanently. Russia deployed troops, missile systems, and even surveillance capabilities long before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And Belarus effectively became a launch pad for Russian operations, attacks, and eventually the war. In fact, the initial failed assault on Kiev started in Belarus. It began from Belarusian territory. Lukashenko's compliance is basically grounded in survivalist logic. Hosting Russian forces allows him to avoid domestic regime collapse, retaliatory Western action, or a potential coup. By embedding Russian troops and weapons, he guarantees continued Kremlin support while neutralizing internal dissent through repression and fear of a Russian-backed crackdown. He also wants to appear indispensable to Putin by portraying Belarus as a strategic asset. For Moscow, Belarus is essential as a geopolitical buffer, offering proximity to Poland, the Baltics, as well as Ukraine's north. It also serves as a test ground for military integration, missile deployments, and joint command structures. Moscow views Belarusian territory as part of the strategic depth needed to secure the Russian heartland and to project power westward. With nuclear-capable systems now reportedly being stationed in Belarus, it has become a forward base in Russia's hybrid confrontation with NATO, and Belarus is not merely an ally anymore, it's a de facto militarily integrated into Russia's defense posture.
Irina,
it's part of Russia for all intents and purposes.
Thank you so much, Irina, for sharing that with us and joining all the way from New York. Now, that was Irina Zuckerman. She's a senior journalist. Now we move on to our next news.